The Seth Rollins thing jumps off the page to me as being the biggest thing that's gone awry with respect to the build of 32. Seth Rollins is our number one guy, their world champ, on the shelf probably 6 to 9 months with a major knee surgery.
It is a big deal. I mean, whatever they had planned for Seth Rollins, not just at Survivor Series, but for the Royal Rumble, for WrestleMania, as it related to two pretty important TV figures, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, it all gets wiped away. I mean, what that reverberates on so many levels, because now they have to find somebody either to take Seth's place who wasn't going to be in the top mix, or they need to reshuffle some other people in that top mix and then elevate somebody from the mid card, to take one of the lower spots. I mean, Seth was a major player. Remember, during the Monday Night Wars, Steve, when Nitro was just kicking ass on Raw, Vince McMahon discovered, hey, if I put Steve Austin on the air, our ratings go up. And there were shows for a stretch there where you were like in every quarter hour, like you're wandering backstage and they would show you doing that. They leaned on you hard and you produced ratings. Seth wasn't to that degree because he wasn't popping ratings, but he was a guy that they relied on to fill time on a 3-hour and 5 or 10-minute program every week, wrestling long matches, sometimes twice, cutting a long promo, and doing 1 or 2 backstage segments. And that all gets subtracted too. This isn't just about a big WrestleMania match, big Survivor Series match. It's also about who fills that gap. Daniel Bryan talked about it last week when he was doing some, I think it was a media tour in India. And he was talking about how important guys like him are to this era where fans expect to see good, longer matches on television, the longer matches because they have so much TV time to fill. And he said guys like me, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, the guys who can go and
Your
go
workhorses.
long. Yes, the workhorses who the fans respect, who can fill 18 or 22-minute TV main event and not, do 8 to 12 minutes in their sleep, plus talk on the microphone, which Daniel Bryan was underrated in that regard, and certainly Punk and Seth can do. I'm just saying, there's a lot of things that get lost when Seth Rollins goes down, and it's a big deal, and it's an excuse for them to shake things up because ratings have been awful. So, and I don't put that on Seth as a performer. I think he's been put in some bad situations booking wise. But it is a chance for them to shake things up. I just don't know that just giving Roman Reigns all of that TV time is necessarily a viable solution at this point. So I'm curious where they go with it.
Yeah, I don't think you could put ratings on Seth Rollins. I mean, sure, he can go in there and put in his 2 cents about the storylines, but at the end of the day, man, the power structure there right now is you do what we say, and that's pretty much the way it is. And I would say really probably the only one with the big stick over there and a sledgehammer is John Cena with regards to storylines. And he's with that company for life, and he's not a dictator type of guy. He's a business guy. But, I think he has a big enough hammer that he can really kind of control his own destiny. And there's a lot of mutual respect there. I don't think Seth Rollins kind of has that kind of stroke. And sometimes, I think the guy's so talented, it was to his detriment that he was put and spread into so many different things that were, I want to say, not as good as they could have been. And so, when you're forced to put in so much time, and sometimes it can just start to wear a little bit thin if it's not, badass, really cool stuff that you're asking of this guy to go out and do because you are shorthanded on top guys.
And I thought the role that they positioned Seth in was sort of like a deputy to the champion. He was talked down to like a little league player who was making bad plays on the field, and Triple H and Stephanie, the coaches, were talking down to him. Like Stephanie and Hunter talked to him like a helicopter parent yelling at their kid, like a little too into winning little league game parents. Like
right.
They got on Seth's case, and Seth kind of just took it. And it was entertaining, and Stephanie and Hunter are really, really good at what they do in the roles that they play on television. But I think that having a heel world champion who got talked down to like that week after week actually undercut his drawing power because he didn't seem like the alpha, yet you were expected to wait around to watch the alpha in main events and buy WWE Network to see him in main events. And I think there was kind of conflicted feelings fans had. They liked chanting "you sold out" at him, but they respected the hell out of how good he was in the ring. You and I talked, I think, after SummerSlam and after other pay-per-views where Seth just put in really good in-ring performances, so good that I think, Steve, you thought, and sometimes I thought too after some of these pay-per-views, they're turning a babyface because that's not how a heel who wanted to be booed would work, but Seth couldn't help himself. He's just that good in the ring. So a lot of things get lost, but I guess, and this is sort of a backhanded optimistic view, but the fact that Seth wasn't drawing big ratings, it makes it the blow a little easier to take, because now he has a chance in 6 to 9 months to come back with a whole fresh set of people getting pushes, new circumstances, a break from being overexposed. I'm with you. I think it was badly overexposed. And it, in a way, the timing couldn't be worse because John Cena's out for 6 weeks doing a side project, and Randy Orton is out injured with a recurring shoulder situation, get surgery on that. So some of their go-to guys that they would just by default lean on aren't around, which I think is a good thing because it's going to force them to take a fresh look at pushing some guys who maybe they found excuses that I disagreed with not to push harder, a Kevin Owens type, for instance.
Well, let me break in there for a second. When you're talking about Triple H and Stephanie, and Triple H has cut some of the best promos he's cut, in his life, and of course Stephanie's always cut a great A promo. But going back to your point, I thought they talked down to him a little bit too much. And I know his character and a Brock Lesnar character are in two different worlds. But still, you would not talk to Brock Lesnar like that and expect him to just stand there. And so, although Seth is a different type of heel, you can't, helicopter parent or however that terminology used, you can't talk to him like that. You've got to treat this guy with the respect that he's the creme de la creme, he's the best of the best. That's why he's carrying that big ass strap of gold. You got to treat him like your world champion. If you treat him a little bit like a chump, people are going to perceive him as a chump. Now, with that being said, he's that sneaky kind of, I don't want to say cowardly, but backpedaling heel. When he gets an advantage, he gets mean, but you just can't treat him like that. And so now that he, goes down with the knee injury, and it's very unfortunate, but yeah, it forces him to go to other people, and he comes back to a whole different set of circumstances. But I always tell this to the guys that when they go down to injury, much like I did way back in the day, and like I told Tyson Kidd, I talk to him every now and then. But when Seth is out, when you remove yourself from the game because of injury, you didn't want to, but you're able to, sometimes you're so far in the forest you can't see because of the trees. You take yourself back and watch. You see what everybody else is doing. Watch how the storylines are going. Listen and watch to what the fans are responding to. See what's resonating, what's not, where people are hitting the mark, where people are striking out, and it's you're able to kind of take a whole different perspective of where you were or where you are now. And when you go back, a fresh set, he doesn't need any more sequences or moves, but from a psychological standpoint or from a promo standpoint, to watch, look, and listen to what everybody else is doing and proceed accordingly. And it might be the same Seth Rollins. It might be Seth Rollins with a little bit of salt and pepper, or, a Seth Rollins who comes back full of piss and vinegar and vengeance and is on a mission because, his whole world literally got yanked out from under him. Yeah, it was due to an injury, but that, because everything has changed when he comes back, it's that much more impetus to go back and reclaim the gold. So he could come back with a whole different mindset and a whole different attitude. It's almost a chance for him if he needs to retool or reinvent himself to some degree.
Yeah, the phrase has been used that you wrestle a certain style to get yourself over, and then you wrestle an augmented style once you're over to last as long as possible and make as much money. And I question, and I know a lot of people do, whether Seth was wrestling too much the style that you wrestle when you're trying to get yourself over and not conservative enough and understand. And it felt the same way about Daniel Bryan, with some of the moves that he was doing when he was already over. I think that what happened in Europe was sort of a fluke injury, but as Seth, I think, even hinted about a little bit, there's a certain mental and physical fatigue from, he had just gotten to Europe, and that's he's wrestling at a different time of day for his inner clock. And there's obviously a long flight, and he's been through the grind of not having a lot of time off right before that. And he kind of hinted that, this was kind of a complex injury that came about from a variety of reasons. And I thought that was an interesting thing that he said in that WWE.com interview. My take on it, and I'd be interested in his elaborating, but maybe he wouldn't feel comfortable doing so, is he kind of saying, I might have been mentally and physically fatigued, and that might have been one of the reasons I didn't hit my landing like I did the hundreds of other times I did that move. I want to throw back at you, Steve. going to Europe, the travel, the time difference, and the grind of the schedule, does it seem even a conversation piece? Is it worth talking through whether maybe this relatively routine move? I mean, it's not super routine, but this relatively routine move, if something went wrong in part because of the grind and the physical and mental fatigue that somebody who's the workhorse like he has been, the condition he might be in that regard.
Man, I tell you what, when you say a routine move for him is a high-risk move for me.
Yes.
It's much more dynamic of an athlete than I was. He does some great things, but here's the thing. You know, it always seems, and sometimes guys get hurt doing high-risk things, but many more injuries happen just doing the basic things. I remember Triple H blowing out that quad. I mean, I think it was just hitting the rope or basically going to make a save, and that thing blew on him. I remember one time we were wrestling in Hamilton, Ontario. There wasn't a very good house. Me, Triple H, a couple of guys, we were working a 4 or 6 man tag, and we kind of just said, hey, man, we got a big deal tomorrow. Let's go out there, everybody stay safe, and get through it. Bam, Triple H goes down, he smokes his knee just hitting the ropes. So sometimes, man, it's just the simple things you do. I mean, you could be hitting the ropes and just hit the ropes in the wrong fashion, a little bit low, and fly through the ropes. So, anything could happen at any time, but I wouldn't say whether it was a European tour or the guy being too fatigued. It's just that people really have to understand, no matter what you think about the business, or they can tell you it's a work all day long, or they can call it sports entertainment. When you got guys and gals of the size and magnitude and the things that they're trying to get done in the ring, it just lends itself to being, a place that a lot of injuries happens, and that's what it is. And sometimes it's doing the most mundane things. Dropping an elbow just, can blow a guy's rotator cuff out, and that's just the way it goes.